Thanks for taking the time to download the Inside the Jungle podcast. To send along your feedback about this show, send your emails to insidethejungle@spnt.tv.
Hey, what's happening, Bengals fans? Yes, we're back inside the jungle in the Wednesday night roundtable after a couple weeks off. A lot to discuss this week. Marvin Lewis is back for another year. Also, some big news. The NFL schedule was released on Tuesday night. We'll talk about that. And, of course, the NFL draft coming up next week. It's going to be a fun one here on the Wednesday night roundtable at cincyjungle.com. Get in touch.
This is the Wednesday Night Roundtable
with Nick Superling, Mickey Menzer, Anthony Cosenza, and Scott Bantel.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are around the world. It's the Wednesday Night Roundtable, part of the Inside the Jungle podcast here at cincyjungle.com. Big news today. The Bengals announced that Marvin Lewis has signed a contract extension through 2016. So, Bengals fans, you can relax. There will be no coaching hot seat for the Bengals this fall. Glad you could join us here. I'm Nick Strubeling, back with the fearsome foursome after a couple weeks off. Let's welcome in the group, starting with the bearded one, Mickey Menzer. What's up, Mick?
Not much, man. I'm pretty upset.
Why are you upset?
Well, the Bengals extended Marvin Lewis. They didn't cut anyone. We still have Andy Dalton as our quarterback. Oh, wait, you're right. I don't care about that stuff. But I'm just trying to preemptively strike all the negativity that I feel like people are ready to bring.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's if you pay attention to anything on Twitter, it just seems like there's nothing but negative surrounding this.
People love to be angry.
I know, and you wouldn't know that this team went to 4 straight playoffs, right?
Right. I mean, it's terrible.
Well, I'm glad you're back this week. Let's also welcome in Mr. Four Eyes himself, Scotty B. Beam me up. What's up?
What's happening, Nick? Just getting ready for the draft show next week. Hopefully everyone's joining us down there. It's going to be a good time.
It's going to be a great time. I'm looking forward to hanging out with each of you live and in person. Let's not forget the West Coast, the best coast. Mr. Anthony Cosenza. AC, what's up, man?
Not too much. The timing of these shows are impeccable, Nick. I mean, Wednesdays seem to be kind of the midweek point of a lot of NFL news. We take even a week or two off, and all of a sudden there's a slew of Bengal news. So gotta love that. There's a lot to talk about tonight.
I was just talking to Jeff Fisher in the chat room before we got started, and when I was getting ready, obviously I work third shift, so when I get home from work, I get about an hour before I lay down, and I was just trying to think, what are we going to talk about tonight? And then I woke up and was like, whoa, okay, now are we going to have enough time to get it all in? That all escalated very quickly. So we'll obviously touch on the NFL schedule that came out Tuesday night. Got to talk about the Marvin Lewis extension, and at some point we've got to fit in some draft stuff as well. But a lot of that we'll be covering next week at Lachey's live there on Thursday night. Let's start off with Marvin Lewis signing the contract extension. Mickey, I know you're you're not exactly 100% on board with Coach Lewis. I think maybe your feelings toward him has kind of shifted a little bit. But what are your thoughts on the extension and what it means for the team moving forward?
You're right, Nick. I'm on the fence, and a lot of what Anthony says I agree with, but I'm also of the opinion that I'm afraid of the unknown, and it would stink to get rid of Marvin Lewis and pull in a coach that brings back the 4-win seasons that the Bengals enjoyed for ever so long. So I don't know. I think as long as the team continues to improve, makes the playoffs, I'm happy with keeping him here. But you just want to see that next step. So I don't know. I mean, you nailed it. I'm on the fence. I think it was the right move, but man, I hope it means something in the postseason this year.
Yeah, we've always talked about, what is this common thread when it comes to the postseason or lack of postseason success for this Bengals team, Scott, and it's been Marvin Lewis. For whatever reason, and it's not just the postseason games, it's the primetime games as well. But you and I were talking off the air about what exactly the extension means. It's, even if he goes out this year and the team wins 8 games and they miss the postseason, and then they decide to make a move and make a change at the coaching position, it's not like that extra year is really going to hurt the Bengals anyway.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that surprised me was, I don't understand what it means in a timing standpoint. I mean, if you want to, show some sort of support for Lewis and show that you're behind him, why a 1-year extension? And if you're only going to do a 1-year extension, I guess why bother at this point in time? What's the difference between him having a one more year? I don't think it's going to make a difference next year if they don't do well. There's still the possibility they cut him even with that 1-year extension. So I guess for me it's more confusing. But like Mickey said, when you talk about Lewis, as much as I'm not a huge Lewis guy, do you really trust this management team to hire a coach? I mean, I know they've made some changes and they've been better recently, but they've really only hired one coach that's been successful, and that's Lewis. So, it's kind of be careful what you wish for. If they let Lewis go, do you trust them to bring in a good coach?
I would say no. What do you think about that, AC, and your thoughts on the extension?
Well, we've talked about this before, Nick. You can't. I understand the fear of the unknown, and I understand the fear of maybe bringing in another coach that could usher in the dark days again that we saw in the 90s, and that's why I do. I am a little bit of the fence rider like Mickey, but Mickey said something a second ago about, as long as the team keeps making the playoffs and as long as the team keeps improving. Well, they're making the playoffs, but this team isn't improving. They're around that 9-10 win area, and they've seemed to hit a plateau. Now, I mean, if you can look at quarterback, you can look at the defense in big games, you can look at all kinds of different things, but there is one constant in all of these big games and all of the playoff games, and it's Marvin Lewis. And his teams aren't – they have consistently showed that they are not prepared to play in big games against good teams and in big moments. And that's where I have a problem with it. And I would have liked to have seen not that I'm necessarily against Marvin Lewis sticking around this club, but I would have liked to have seen what this team would have done with him on the hot seats, if you will, the 1 year prove it type of deal. We've talked about Andy Dalton kind of being on that portion of his big contract that he signed, kind of a prove it year for him as well. I would have liked to have seen this team with both of those guys entering contract years like that and see if this team can take the next step. I don't know if that would have prompted the team to do better in the playoffs, make the playoffs again, what have you, but they're rewarding status quo, and what they've preached this offseason is nothing's going to be status quo, and that's all we've seen. They've brought back old players. They kept Marvin Lewis around for another year, and I don't know. It's not really changing, and they preach change all offseason, which I find ironic.
Yeah, that's a word we've been throwing around quite a bit here on the podcast. Change. Well, let me ask you this question, Mickey, because your fear, and if the Bengals were to make a move, there is the potential that they could find a coach that isn't quite up to snuff and goes out and wins 3 games a year, 4 games a year. But what if they go find that coach that wins them 12 games a year, wins them 13 games a year, and makes deep runs into the postseason? There's always that side of it too. Now, I guess the question you were asking is, do you trust this management team to find that coach? And I guess that's where the dilemma lies.
Yeah, I don't know. And you could, but I don't know. I feel like last season the Bengals, kind of slayed some demons and went into the playoffs just incredibly injured. They had all their stars were hurt. It was just, and then the guys that weren't hurt got hurt in that game. So, it's tough to say after the 4th in a row, but I give them a pass on that one. The linebacker was decimated. Running backs hurt in the game. No A.J. Green, no Eifert, no Jones. It's tough to win when you're that beat up. I don't know. I still want to see a healthy Bengals team in the playoffs this season, and then I might change my mind. I don't know. I think that's a panic thing. I forget the stats now since we're so far removed, but didn't Peyton Manning lose a bunch of playoff games before he finally got over the hump? Sometimes that first win's tough to get, but once you get it, then you feel pretty good. And I think Marvin, at least for this season, has earned another spot. So it's less that I'm afraid that management can't find another coach. I mean, I'm sure the next Shula's out there, or Kozlet or whatever, but I think that Marvin has earned another season.
Here's the thing: when you look at the outlook of the AFC as a whole, right? Tom Brady isn't going to be around much longer. Peyton Manning, not going to be around much longer. These teams these are the upper echelon teams in the NFL. They're going to come back down to earth, and the Bengals have positioned themselves with. See, and AC's already shaking his head. Go ahead, AC. What do you want to chime in?
I'm sorry. I understand your point, but I just go back, and I guess it's the former athlete and coach in me that says if you want to be the best, you have to beat the best. And the Bengals have not beaten those teams consistently. They have not beaten those quarterbacks consistently. And yes, the Bengals have a pretty good roster, and they're winning games, but you can't sit around and wait for good quarterbacks to retire or other coaches, and then you sit here and you go, okay, now it's our turn.
Right.
Now you have to build the best team possible. You have to build the best coaching staff possible, and beat the best teams. That's why I was shaking my head. I understand, Nick. I completely understand where you're coming from, and yes, probably in the next year or two, those teams will experience a really harsh reality check, and those fans will probably be pretty upset for a couple of years, unless it's like the Colts situation where they luck into another very pun intended there.
Yeah,
into another quarterback. So I wasn't shaking my head because I think you're dumb for saying what you're saying, Nick. I completely understand, but the issue is that while the Bengals have a window of their own that they've built now, and now we've seen 4 years go by with a lot of these core players, and they're not taking advantage of it. And so, are we going to have to wait another 2 or 3 for Tom Brady to retire, and then maybe the Bengals start losing some of these core guys to free agency? Or I don't know. That's kind of what was going through my mind when I was shaking my head. Sorry, I was over animated there, buddy.
That's all right. And to be fair, if you look at Brady and Manning, these are quarterbacks the Bengals have beaten in the last 2 seasons. Obviously, they got thumped pretty good by Brady last season, but they did beat Peyton Manning this year, which was a first in franchise history. So, the big problem, Scott, is the lack of postseason success. And 0-6 does not tell you or give you any kind of hope that things are changing. There's that word again, change.
Yeah, that's the hang up with Lewis. I think he's done a great job as far as building a roster. You take a look around the league, and I think you're hard pressed to find a roster that's much better or much deeper than this Bengals roster. We talk about it every year. But are they good enough? Are they deep enough to win with the quarterback that they have and win with the conservative coach that they have come playoff time? So, I don't know. I don't necessarily like the signing of Marvin Lewis, the extension. Like Anthony said, I kind of wanted to see what happened with him coaching, in that lame duck status, that coaching for a contract. So I would have been one that would have liked to have seen them play it out.
Well, let's continue this conversation. We teased it a couple weeks ago when we were last with you about giving our position. We finished up the players as far as the positional grades go, and we wanted to give some coaching grades for 2014. So let's stick with that and continue with Marvin Lewis, Mickey. Before we do that, I want to go to an email we got this week from Dan Beck. He gave a number of different grades for different coaches, but I'll give the one he mentioned for Marvin. He's giving Marvin a B. He could do better at taking control of the team when one of the coordinator begins calling dumb plays like going pass happy when the running backs are getting 5 yards a carry. His knowledge of the rule book saved the game in Tampa, though, and he has proven to be the only coach we had that can work with Mike Brown's impotence. Look, B, if you consider all the injuries in 2014, I would say, and I would agree, that B is probably a pretty good grade for everything that they had to endure here in 2014.
Yeah, I'd go B, Nick. I think that when it's all said and done, Marvin is always going to be looked at fondly, as a member of this Bengals fraternity. And I think it's earned. I think he changed the culture. I think he's pretty good at evaluating talent. He has his shortcomings. But yeah, I would put a B. The injuries last season were just insane. I mean, it was ridiculous. We didn't lose just 1 or 2 stars. We lost arguably our best player on both sides of the ball, plus a handful of others. I mean, there was times where at whole position groups we didn't have a starter on the field. So yeah, I'm gonna go B. I think that Marvin did a pretty good job last season, and I actually forgot about his knowledge of the rule book, but that was a huge point in the season too.
Yeah, it was a big point, and you got to give him credit in that game as well. The team, the quarterback did not help him out in that game in the first half, but they managed to find a way to win that game. That's for sure. Some of these other grades, Dan is giving a Hugh Jackson a D, would have been an F, but he'll give him credit with the receiver injuries, and he's giving Paul Gunther a C minus. So he's obviously not big on what the coaches did there in 2014 as far as the coordinator positions go. AC, how about you? Marvin in 2014, give me a letter grade.
This is the one area where I can defend the team giving him an extra year on his contract, because I do think he did a good job last year. I mean, you look to Mickey's point, you look at all those injuries, you look at the injuries they had going into that playoff game. You're missing your top 3 offensive passing targets in Eifert, Marvin Jones, and AJ Green. Though Green wasn't hurt the whole season, he was basically gone a third of it, including the playoff game. And then there's other injuries on defense. Leon Hall and Geno Atkins weren't the same. Their pass rush was deplorable, and somehow they scraped together 10 wins. I don't really know how they did it, but they did, and they rallied around their coach. They rallied around each other, and they got to the playoffs again. So there were some mistakes and some other games where they were ill-prepared. The Browns game comes to mind. The Colts game in the regular season comes to mind. But all in all, getting 10 wins with all those injuries was pretty impressive, and that is my lone defense of them giving Lewis an extension today. So I'll go with a B as well.
Scott, do you think so far we're all across the board when it comes to Marvin Lewis and giving him a B? Would you argue that was probably the best coaching job he's done here in Cincinnati in one season?
Yeah, I think when you take into account the the fact he did lose 2 coordinators. Let's not forget about that. He lost 2 coordinators. The injuries that they had. I mean, he had the entire season without his number 2 receiver. The entire season without what I would say is his number 3 receiving option, which was Eifert. And they played one game, being Indianapolis, without a single starting linebacker. So I hate to sound like I'm making excuses for him or the team, but you're not going to find many teams in the NFL that win when they're missing all 3 starting linebackers, or when they're missing 2 or 3 of their top 4 receiving options. It's just not going to happen. So, to get the team that he got to 10 wins, I think was pretty impressive.
How about you, Mick?
Well, it's interesting. So, there's certain people in the chat room blowing them up, but we're asked to grade on last season, right? So when you were in school, Nick, if you were pretty terrible at math and you consistently got D's, and then one test you got an A, did your teacher look at that test and say, well, over the course of the year he gets D's, so I can't give him an A? No, we're grading on last season, so that was his test. And like Scott said, you lost both your offensive and defensive coordinator. You lost a ton of your players. I think he did a pretty good job. That alone makes me, want to give him another shot. We made the playoffs, and people, I mean, come on, seriously, take a step back. Saying it's gone on for so long, that's ridiculous. We are not the cellar dweller team that we were in the past. Like, use those statements for things like that. It is frustrating. It is extremely frustrating that they haven't gotten over that playoff hump, and it needs to happen. They need to take that step. I think last year, if they're healthy, they probably would have done it against Indianapolis. But to be so bitter, to be so negative, it's ridiculous. There's a ton of teams that if we asked them if they wanted to make the playoffs 5 out of the last 6 seasons, they jump on it. But no, we're above that. You know what I mean? Like, we got to take that little step before we worry about anything. And I think Marvin is the one that's pushing us in that direction.
If the question's coming to me about best coaching job, I would say it's up there. I don't think it's the top one for me. I look at 2003. I look at 2009. I mean, 2003, that was basically a 6-game turnaround. I think they were 2-14 the year before he got there, and then they went 8-8. Almost made the playoffs. If you remember, they had that last game against Cleveland that they lost, but could have made the playoffs that game. And 09, there were some limitations on that team, yet somehow they scraped it together and swept the division. That was pretty impressive. But I would say just because of the injuries and the fact that they got 10 wins this year, that was pretty impressive. It was up there for me as one of his most impressive. Probably not the overall most impressive in my book, though.
Yeah, 2009 was a pretty difficult year when you consider all the adversity they had to go through. When you consider everything that happened with Chris Henry. I believe that year Marvin Lewis won Coach of the Year, if I'm not mistaken, there in 2009. So that's a pretty good year to base that on. But yeah, I would say out of all the years that Marvin's been there, if I had to rank them, I'll go 09 as number 1, and then I would say in 2014 that was number 2. That was his best year with all the injuries, replacing 2 key coordinators that went on to get head coaching jobs. I mean that's hard to do, and really difficult to do in this league. And so got to give him credit. They didn't win the postseason game, but how many? And to be honest, yes or no, how many of you fully expected the Bengals to win that game in Indy in the postseason? I went into it thinking, well, if they win, great, but I'm not upset if they lose.
I didn't expect them to. I was hoping they'd eke it out, get a little healthier the week after, and then maybe make a run from there. But I wasn't expecting it.
I think Mickey and Scott agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd be kidding yourself if you said you expected that team to go up there and win based off of what they were missing. But, I think I was wishfully thinking that maybe it could be done, but, I don't think that was realistic.
All right. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though, Bengals fans. Those are our grades for, we could be here all night giving individual grades for the coordinators. Really, the big one that matters is Marvin Lewis. We're all in agreement. We're thinking B's, and here he is again, signed through 2016, Bengals fans. So get used to seeing Marvin Lewis there on the sidelines at the Jungle this season and in 2016. Love to hear your thoughts, though. You can always email us insidethejungle@spnt.tv. Dan, thanks for the email. Appreciate you emailing us. Let's transition here and talk about the NFL schedule, shall we? Bengals opening up. I got to ask you guys, how many of you like watching football on baseball diamonds? Well, we're going to see that this year as the Bengals open up on the road in Oakland to take on the Raiders. September 13th at 4:25 p.m. Mickey, a West Coast game to start off. Your thoughts?
I think it's interesting. I think the Raiders are, kind of labeled as a possible up-and-coming team. The Bengals get a chance to start with what a lot see as like maybe a cupcake game. So I think it's cool.
AC, they're going to be out by you. Well, not by you, but in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, I was already talking with some family members about potentially going to this game and a few others. So in that respect, I'm pretty psyched on the schedule. Traditionally, the Bengals haven't really done too well in Oakland. I think the last 2 times, at least that I can recall, 2009 and 2003, they lost. I was actually in attendance for that 2003 game. So that's a little tricky. This is obviously a little bit different Raiders team. They're not as strong, and they're a little bit in transition. And I don't know. That's a big time difference. We'll see if it affects them. It'd be nice to start off with a win against a team that they don't normally travel and play well against. So I'd like to think they start off 1-0, but we'll see.
2003, I believe that was the year Chad Johnson walked up to Jerry Rice at halftime, right? I think that was the game.
Yeah. I remember kind of being harassed by Raiders fans that year because that was year the Bengals were obviously coming off a terrible season. The Raiders had just gone to the Super Bowl and lost, so their fans were still pretty rabid, and they saw a couple of guys in Bengals gear, and it wasn't good.
And you want to go back for more. All right, then. Your thoughts on opening up the season out in Oakland, Scott?
Oh, it's fine. I think it's nice to have a winnable game. I didn't realize this till they released the schedule. That's now 6 years in a row the Bengals have opened on the road, so I got to go back to the NFL and wonder what they have against the Bengals. You would think that in 6 years they might get 1 or 2 at home, huh?
Is it really 6 years in a row? Wow, I didn't know that
Apparently,
either.
yeah, apparently so.
Wow, interesting. Well, yeah, I mean, it'll be cool to watch some football on a baseball diamond, as I said. You don't get to see that very often. Looking at some of the other highlights, the Bengals they'll come home the following week to take on the San Diego Chargers. Then they go on the road to Baltimore, home against KC and Seattle. Then they go to Buffalo before they have a Week 7 bye. Then they are at Pittsburgh, home against Cleveland and Houston, back out west to take on the Cardinals in Arizona. They host the Rams, go to Cleveland, home against Pittsburgh. Then they go on the road again to the West Coast against the 49ers and back out west again at Denver, their last road game of the year. And then they end the season January 3rd at home against the Baltimore Ravens. So when you look at the overall schedule, guys, you see a lot of long trips there. Have you had a chance to really look at it and kind of forecast the record? I know it's early, Mickey, but why not? It should be fun.
16-0.
I like it.
That's about all the forecasting I can do right now. I've been kind of looking at the schedule and looking at the primetime games and looking like, when's the bye? How does the timing in between a primetime game to the next game or before one of those games, shake out? Those are the kind of things I'm looking at yet. And I think it's way too early to start predicting. I mean, there's still the draft and camps, and there's just a ton of pre-football football to get through before I even take that. So I'll lock me in at 16-0 for now.
Are you concerned about the amount of trips out west?
No. I think the Bengals have slayed that demon. I think the schedule looks tough based on last year's results, but as we see every year, that is also just a made-up thing because there's a handful of teams that go from worst to first, and there's other ones that go from first to last. So you're not sure how that tough the schedule is actually going to be until you play it.
Chase in the chat room, Scott, is saying 11-5 for this Bengals team in 2015.
Yeah, I'm going to be more realistic than Mickey. I'll say 15-1. I mean, taking a look at the schedule, I always get a kick out of how fiery people get, over the schedule. Who did or didn't get, the short stick by the NFL. It's so tough to tell. I mean, the 49ers at San Fran looks like a tough game, but how good are they going to be without Harbaugh? They lost a bunch. That's not the same 49ers team. You just don't know what these teams are. Maybe the Chargers trade Rivers. All of a sudden, that game doesn't look nearly as difficult. So, I think at first glance, you look at it and you say, 10 wins might be, it's going to be tough to get more than 10. But, come opening day, some of these teams might not look the way we think they're going to.
A bit more realistic with 15-1. I like that. That was brilliant. 15-1. That would be nice, though. I don't see that happening. They're going out west by you a lot this year, AC. Are you concerned about the travel?
A little bit, but you have to also consider that teams that are from out west are also going back to visit them. I mean, they're splitting that half and half, so that makes it kind of even in their favor. And to kind of follow up on the realistic comedy of my colleagues here, I mean, the other issue that the Bengals are facing is that they have 4 primetime games, and they don't normally play well in primetime. And, some of those appear winnable, the San Francisco game, and, luckily they're not playing the Ravens and Steelers in primetime because they never seem to play well in those matchups under the bright lights. But 4 primetime games that, the way they've been performing in those games, whether you believe in that curse or what or not, that's got to be a little scary, even though there's a fun aspect to that as well.
For some reason, the NFL really liked seeing that Cleveland-Cincinnati primetime matchup last year, that barn burner that was a game at Paul Brown Stadium, and yet here we are for rematch part 2 in primetime. That game, November 5th. On NFL Network. That would be a Thursday night game, and then they play another primetime game. So at least they have some time off after this game. They'll play that Thursday night, and then they won't play again until the following Monday against the Houston Texans at home. So they're getting somewhat rewarded for playing on a Thursday night and getting some much needed rest and some time off after that game. Where it seems like in years past they've really been unfortunate with a lot of travel leading up to that game, which, by the way, they'll be at Pittsburgh the week before that Thursday night game. So, again, they won't have a whole lot of traveling, and they'll have a lot more time to recuperate. But, again, that game against Pittsburgh is going to be brutal. And that short week might come back to bite the Bengals when they play the Browns on Thursday night. We shall see. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though, Bengals fans, on the schedule. Willie Anderson, former Bengals great, says today on Twitter the Bengals are going to make a deep postseason run, and he's never said that before, but thinks they will happen this year. Who knows? Who knows with Willie? Let's go to the Skype line, shall we? Let's welcome in our good pal Cody Toomey, who's going to be joining us next week live at Lachey's Bar in Cincinnati. Cody, what's up, buddy?
Hey, what's up, guys?
What's on your mind tonight?
You're probably thinking I'm calling a talk draft, but I'm actually going to follow the discussion here about the schedule, considering the divisions we have to play and the teams that everyone's going to play. I feel like the Bengals probably got one of the best schedules as far as their division. If you look at the Browns and the Steelers back half of their season, it's pretty brutal. I mean, Pittsburgh's going to have to probably be 7-1 to get to 10 wins because their back half is, they get Cleveland, which is an easy one, and then they go at Seattle, home versus Indy, at Cincy, home versus Denver, at Baltimore, and then they get the layup in Cleveland at the end of the year. But that's a pretty tough stretch of 5 games that they're going to have to face from Week 12 on. The Browns' second half is pretty tough. So, I mean, you get a West Coast game to start the season, even though you start on the road. That helps that they won't have to worry about the midweek East Coast, West Coast travel. They can go out there early if they want. Home versus Seattle helps. I think they can start 4-2. But yeah, I think they got a pretty favorable schedule to start off compared to what some of the other teams were dealt with some brutal stretches of games.
Yeah, I mean, you look around the division, I think that loss to Pittsburgh at the end of the season last year really helped as far as the schedule for 2015 goes, because now you're right, you look at Pittsburgh and they've got a whammy of a schedule there in 2015. Bengals kind of lucked out. Who would have thought that a loss would be good for this team?
Yeah, and we'll start some conspiracy theories. Good old Goodell gave his buddy Robert Kraft a game against Pittsburgh during the Le'Veon Bell suspension, and 2 crappy teams. So there's your conspiracy theory of the day.
Nice. I didn't even think about that. I don't pay attention to Pittsburgh Steelers players, let alone the ones that are suspended. That's good. I'm glad you brought that up, though. It'll be interesting. We'll see if there's any punishment for Deflategate too. We haven't heard much about that lately, so we'll see.
Yep.
Hey, appreciate the call, Cody. Hey, you know what? I'm looking forward to hanging out next week. It's gonna be fun.
As am I. I'll can't wait to see everybody next week, and the draft is 8 days away.
We'll be sending it over to Cody throughout the night next week. Check out his big board. See who the best player available will be left, and it's going to be a fun time. Looking forward to it, Cody. Thanks for calling in, bud.
Yeah, no worries. Have a good one.
Uday, that's Cody Toomey joining us here on the Skype line. If you want to get in touch, 404-946-3397 is the number to call. We did get another email this week from Steven, and he wanted to ask about the draft. His question for tonight says, I'm sure it's too late, but who is each of yours realistic pick at 21 that you want this year? So, Scott, I know you've been following the draft pretty closely. Who do you want to see there at 21?
Oh man, if it's a pipe dream, the guy I'd really like to see is Malcolm Brown. I know with the signing of Pat Sims, the defensive tackle, may not be where they go, but I'd still like to see them take a defensive tackle because I think that would be the best selection. I think more realistic, it's going to be a left tackle, or I should just say an offensive lineman. My prediction right now would be Eric Flowers from Miami. I think that's a realistic player that's probably going to be there, and it's a player that I think they would have interest in.
Well, Scott just made Fatal Content tonight, Mickey. How about you? You don't have to necessarily give a player, but what about a position group that you think they should target at 21?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to see safety maybe, but I have no clue, Nick. I mean, I think I'd like to see them go defense. Kind of like what Scott said at the beginning. We did, kind of both. When you're not sure about what to do, the more big guys you get on the line can't hurt, keep guys fresh. So I'd love to see a defensive pick, preferably safety.
Sticking with the secondary, it's near and dear to Mickey's heart, of course. Our resident corner here on the show. How about UAC? Position group or a player that you really would like there at 21?
If they stay at 21, I think I'd like to see linebacker out of UCLA, Eric Kendricks. I think there's still a little bit of a depth issue at linebacker with Vontez Perfect rehabbing and a couple of other question marks there. There's a couple of other routes they can take. If they maybe move back into the first round, maybe you look at one of those offensive tackles that's liable to fall because of the overall kind of depth at that position, or you maybe even look at wide receiver. If a Jalen Strong is there, if you move back and from Arizona State, you grab a guy like that, maybe even a Nelson Aguilar guy who can do a number of different things at wide receiver. They could go a number of different ways. I think if a guy like Shane Ray maybe falls to 21, some people think he's back end first round, some people think he's kind of earlier. If he falls at 21, I think he'd be a good player to have too. Can rush the passer. Maybe you teach him some nuances of the outside linebacker position too. So there's a lot of different ways that they could go, and I'd be pretty pleased.
I would love to see them go get a wide receiver that could stretch the field opposite of A.J. Green there at 21. I think that the offense last year, because you don't know what you've got in Eifert, you don't know if he can stay healthy. So for me, I'm thinking they got to get a burner on the other side of the field that can take the pressure off of A.J. because right now he's getting a lot of bracket coverage with the safety over the top. But that's just my take. I'd love to see them go receiver there at 21. I know, Mickey, you want to add something to that?
Well, I did some draft profiles, and I think that there's an opportunity to grab that later. So I don't know that's why I'd shy away from that with my first pick. Plus, you have Jones coming back, but look at a guy like, and I know I'm going to get labeled as the homer, but a guy like Devin Smith, right, whose sole game is stretching the field. 55% of his catches last season for more than 25 yards. I think he only had 33 catches or something like that and 12 for touchdown, but he's a second, third round type guy. So if that's what you wanted out of that position, I think that you might have the opportunity later in the draft.
Yeah, and it sounds like there's a lot of depth when it comes to receivers in this draft. A lot of quickness. I believe his name Tyler Lockett, if I'm not mistaken, out of Kansas State. I would be actually thrilled to see him in a Bengals uniform. He reminds me a lot of Jordy Nelson, a guy with a lot of speed there, and comes from the same program there at Kansas State. So that'd be cool as well. Thanks for the email, Steve. Appreciate it. If you want to email us, insidethejungle@spnt.tv is the email address. Before we get out of here, how about we do some shout-outs, shall we? Shout-outs! Scott, why don't you start us off this week?
Yeah, I made a shameless plug 2 weeks back trying to get up to 200 followers and said that I would give a shout-out to whoever was my 200th follower, and proud to say I got there. So the plug today goes to Robert Harris at RC Harris 1962. So that is my shout out for today.
Solid, well done. How about you, mate?
Mine's a tweet we got, Nick, from someone who had some kind of bad luck, but sent us a picture of their Bengals cast. I think you favored it, but the name's Robin, and the Twitter handle is at ROBAITKEN65. So I dig the cast, man. If I was around, I'd sign it, but it's all orange and black. It's cool.
Yeah, it's striped too. It's like a little like a orange and black candy cane type shape or design there on his cast. That's a good shout out. Thanks for the tweet, Robin, and hope you get better soon with that leg. How about you, AC?
I'm going to shout out a gentleman who seemed to be pretty excited about our show this evening, Ryan Stigall, Stigall. His Twitter handle is @InsightAMovement. He seemed to be pretty excited to tune in tonight and or download the show. And I'm also going to shout out, since we talked about Bengals coaches and grades and all that stuff, I'm going to shout out Kyle Caskey, running backs coach. He was a first-year coach for the running backs. Did a pretty good job with those, with that group, I would say, and also started following me on Twitter after a couple of things I threw out there. So those are my 2 shout-outs.
Good shout-outs as well. I'm going to cop out, guys. I don't have a specific shout-out, but I'm going to tell you what. I'm going to give a group shout-out to everybody that downloads and supports this podcast. The last week, I was out in Las Vegas. That's why we didn't have a show. The week before that, had some family stuff come up, so couldn't make the Wednesday night program. But last Wednesday, I had the chance to hang out in Vegas at the Podcast Awards. Now, for those of you who don't know, no, we did not win. It is the 4th year in a row we lost to ESPN. So I went into that Podcast Awards much the same way that I went into that postseason game against the Colts, not expecting to win. But I just want to give a shout-out and a thank you to everybody who supports the show. Whether you voted in the Podcast Awards, whether you submitted your nominations, whether you contribute on Patreon, it's amazing the amount of feedback we get and the amount of people that email, wondering where we're at and why we didn't have a show last week. And a lot of you actually, you sent out some tweets wishing that everything was okay and why we missed the show a couple weeks ago. I say thank you. I cannot believe the amount of support we get for the show. And, yeah, that's my shout-out. Everybody who downloads the show, you're all awesome. And it's great that we get a chance to connect.
Well, should we fire you, though, Nick, since you've been 4 times and haven't won? Are we there? It's easy to win the Podcast Awards, right?
Boom.
Oh,
Boom.
that is brilliant. Yeah, go ahead. If that's change for the sake of change.
There you go. I vote we keep him on. We're still trending up.
I'd give him a 1-year extension, but that's about it.
That is so great. Well done, Mickey. Well done. Yeah, again, thank you to everybody who supports the show. I really do appreciate it. And I'm really looking forward to next week. It's going to be a good time. Before we talk about next week, though, let's go back to the Skype or to the Jungle line. Area code 703. Hi, who's this?
Hi, this is Richard Rolson.
Hey, Richard. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing better that you guys are back on.
Yeah, it was a couple weeks.
You guys the last couple weeks.
Yeah, we missed you as well. What's on your mind tonight, buddy?
Well, I just wanted to give my 2 cents in the draft. I did have a quick story. I was actually going to come out to Cincinnati to see you guys, and the day, my wife and I talked about it, we worked it out that I was going to go. A teenager crashed into my car, and there went our extra cash.
Oh, bummer.
Cincinnati.
Bummer.
I was really curious. But I'm wishing you guys luck, and are you taking donations to help pay for this?
Patreon. We'll that's the best way to support the show. spnt.tv/Patreon. That'll go a long way in helping us out. So that's one way.
I'll pitch for extra dollars to help you guys.
Oh, thank you.
On my this draft, there's a bunch of players that I'd love to get. I mean, I think the Bengals are actually in a good spot like last year that they can get best player available. What I'm hoping is whether if it's the best player is an offensive lineman at the point in the first round, they get that. If they then in the second round they go defense. I still think our defensive line needs some bolstering. And I'm with the other guys that there are some receivers out there that I think will be around in the 3rd and 4th round, and some of them have some serious speed that you can bring them in and they don't have so much pressure on them. And with the way college football is now, a lot of these guys can catch. The main thing is can they run the routes? That's always the hardest part, I think, transitioning from college to the pros. So my hope is I'd love to see Malcolm Brown, but I don't think he'll be there. And then for an offensive lineman, I'd love La'el Collins out of LSU. So, anyways, good luck next week and have a great show.
Hey, appreciate it. Tune in live. We'll be live streaming it as well, and hopefully we'll open up the phone lines and hear from you that night too. Appreciate the call, Richard.
Okay, thanks.
Good day.
Great day.
You too. That's Richard here on the Skype line, or not? I keep saying the Skype line, the Jungle line, giving us his take here on episode 191. So, speaking of next week, cannot be more excited about our live draft show. We've been doing the live draft show the last couple of years. This time, we're taking the show on the road. It's going to be a blast. I know Scott and Mickey, you guys were down there last week, and you scouted out the place. And I think it's going to be a good time, and I'm really looking forward to hanging out with a bunch of fans of the podcast ahead of time. We'll start the meetup at 6. We'll have some beers. We'll have some food, and then we'll start the live show at 8. Mickey, I know you're pumped about this.
Oh, yeah. I made sure to sample some of the beers when I was there before to make sure everything was, above bar. It's pretty good, so I'm going to have, quite a few next Thursday, so I'll be in perfect form for the podcast.
What is the drink of choice to start with?
I don't know. I mean, it depends on what time I get down there. I'll do some craft beer, but when we get around to the Bengals pick, there's going to be some bourbon in my hand, that's for sure.
All right. We got to keep it clean, though. It's a family show. Can we do that?
I'll do it.
All right, good. What about you, Scott? I got to give you props, man. You kicked around this idea a couple months ago, and you're making it happen. And I can't thank you enough for all that you've done for this live show. It's going to be a blast.
Oh, yeah, man. It's going to be a good time. Mickey and I got a chance to take a look at the place. I think it's going to be a good setup. I think we'll fill that place for sure on Thursday. And, I look forward to meeting some of our chat room people, some of our listeners, and talking draft. I think the draft is like Christmas for NFL.
And I love that the Bengals, because they keep winning, the pick is late in the night, which gives us plenty of time to discuss where we think they might go, to see different guys go off the board. Now all of a sudden things change and where the Bengals might be looking. And so I like that they get to pick late in the night. For a long time there, we were so used to them picking early on in the draft, and so our day was over really quickly. But, I don't mind staying up late and checking out where the Bengals are going. AC, we're going to see you next week, right? You're coming out?
I'm doing my best.
Okay. All right.
I've had some things pop up on a number of different fronts, so I'm doing my best. I will do my best, and if for some reason it does not work out, I hope that I am still going to be able. I don't know if you guys have arrangements, but if I can still at least be there virtually, I'd love to do that as well. But I will do my best to be there. Like I said, a lot of different stuff has unfortunately popped up for the past. But I really want to be there. I really want to make it happen. So I'll be in touch.
Right, for sure. And if you can't make it out, obviously we will find a way to get you on the live stream. That won't be a problem, and it will be easy to do, and obviously a lot cheaper as well. So
I mean that's the finances is one aspect, but some family stuff has popped up, some other stuff has popped up. So without going into too much detail, that's kind of juggling a lot and trying to make it happen. So I really want to be there. I'm still hoping to work it out last minute, and we'll see.
Well, either way, we will be looking forward to hanging out next week, talking draft. The four of us, for sure. I know Cody's going to be coming in. He'll be our Mel Kiper for the night, throwing it over to his big board, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So the podcast meetup starts at 6. I'll be down there. The guys will be down there, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Come down, have a beverage, come have a meal. We'll hang out, and then the show will kick off at 8 o'clock, and we'll go all the way through the end of the first round that night. We'll be live again. That place, Lachey's Bar in Over the Rhine in downtown Cincinnati. It's going to be a lot of fun. Before we get out of here, a couple late shout-outs. This one from at Metroid64. He says, listening for years, hear great insights here, feel like you're my bros. That's from Brandon. Brandon, you are a bro. Thanks for the tweet. Also, this last one from Ryan, at Ryan_AV12. Shout out me, man. You know it makes sense. Listening from England. So, Ryan, there's your shout out this week as well. Thanks for your tweet. If you want to get in touch with me, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Nick Suberling. Where can they follow you, AC?
At CJ Anthony, CUI.
How about you, Mick?
At Houday Fans.
And last but not least, beam me up, Scott.
At Scott Bantel.
Next week for the live draft show, we are going to be doing, we'll obviously have our same chat room setup that we normally do, but I'm also going to try and put a big emphasis on the Twitter and get a hashtag going. So next week, when you're tweeting during the live draft show, we're going to use the hashtag ITJ Draft. That's hashtag ITJ Draft. And I know Rebecca from Cincy Jungle, she's going to be running the Cincy Jungle Twitter account that night. She'll do her best to tweet out some good stuff that we're talking about during the live draft show. And again, that hashtag ITJ Draft. As always, this show is a listener-supported show, as we just talked about with Richard. If you want to contribute to our live draft show for next week and some projects moving forward, we're going to be doing a lot more of these live-type shows on location. Help us out on Patreon. It goes a long way. spnt.tv/Patreon. That's Patreon. That will help us out. There's a project right now. If we reach that certain level on our Patreon page, the Football Daily podcast for this fall will be back. So check that out as well. Before we get out of here, I got to thank my associate producers, Andy Lanham, Larry Rolson, Mike Vardy, and Fadl by Ari. Final thoughts. AC, episode 191. Thank you again for rushing home from work and being with us this week.
Absolutely. After 2 weeks, I wouldn't miss it. So good chatting with you guys. Just a couple quickies. Another shout out to Rebecca Toback. You mentioned her just a second ago, Nick. She is critical to what we do on a day-to-day basis at Cincy Jungle, both in editing and doing some social media stuff, posting things here and there as well. So I think she listens to the show as well. She's been in the chat room here and there, so shout out to her. And, we were talking about Marvin Lewis and grading him as a B, and as the show went on, I began to think about, that's kind of what he is throughout his career as the Bengals head coach anyway. He's a B coach. He's pretty good. He's above average. He's not the best coach in the league, but he gets the team to be competitive more often than not. He gets them to the playoffs. I think 6 out of the 12 years he's been a coach. So that's just kind of a thought that struck me as we talked through that and as the show went on.
Good stuff, AC. Appreciate you coming back this week. I know it's been a long 2 weeks, and glad to have you back this week here on episode 191. Final thoughts, Mickey Menser.
I'm pumped for next week, Nick. I think it's going to be a good show. I can't wait. I mean, we've done, what episode is this? Like 3,044? I've waited 190-some episodes to get your shirt off, and I think it's finally going to happen. I'm pretty excited about that.
Don't even hold your breath, man.
That's what I'm – you're trying to get a hashtag. I'm going to make that trend on Twitter.
Oh, you're crazy. No. We'll see. No, not going to happen.
It's going to be fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun, regardless if my shirt is on or off. We're going to have a blast. And It'll be the first time you and I will be recording Inside the Jungle face-to-face.
Yes.
It only took us about 160 episodes to make that happen.
Yep.
Looking forward to it. And thank you as well for everything that you do.
Mm-hmm.
Scotty B, beam me up.
I can't wait for next Thursday, man. This will be my first draft show to be a part of, and we'll get to do it live. And nothing could be more exciting than sitting up on a stage, bright lights, cameras, and a shirtless Superling, bringing the house down, bringing the ladies in off the street. We'll be sitting right in front of some windows, so pretty much any female walking by is going to be stopping in when they see Superling sitting up in the corner. They're going to be calling it window shopping in Over the Rhine when they see Subs up there on stage.
You guys are nuts. Absolutely nuts. Also, we're going to be, and I didn't mention this before, we'll be hearing from some folks from around the SB Nation family, some other blogs. I know we're going to be in touch with the Steelers, Behind the Steel Curtain, BaltimoreBeatdown.com. And it's going to be a lot of fun. The list is over at cincyjungle.com for all the guests we're going to be having that night as well. That show is at 8 o'clock. It'll be live right here at cincyjungle.com. And again, that podcast meetup, if you want to come out and hang with us before the show, starts at 6 at Lachey's. Looking forward to seeing everybody out there. That's going to do it. Episode 191 is in the can. My thanks to Anthony, Mickey, and Scott, as always, for all that they do for the show and for cincyjungle.com. Inside the Jungle is an SPNT production. For more information about our other podcasts, log on to spnt.tv. And as always, check out our amazing content at cincyjungle.com. The guys are killing it with draft profiles, rumors, everything you want NFL draft. Find it at cincyjungle.com. That's going to do it. We'll see you next week live at Lachey's. Hoo day, everybody. Silence. Oh man.
I can't wait. Nick, I think there's going to be people calling for you to lose your shirt by the end of the night.
My wife and kids will be there, and my wife will be very ashamed. She doesn't even like me walking around shirtless now.
She's going to be proud.
Yep.
She's going to have to claim her territory.
When she sees that bright light shining on that pasty body.
They don't have lights, do
She's
they?
going to be so happy.
I'll feel bad.
They will when you take your shirt off.
I'll feel bad for Nick Lachey if Soups takes his shirt off. I mean, talk about upstaging you in your own house.
Yeah. Good point. Kind of a dick thing to do, Nick.
I love the. That was so great. I'm gonna go with the more realistic 15.
It's tough to go undefeated.
Oh, yeah, that would be awesome.
I said 13-6 in the chat room.
That'd be nice too. Oh man. AC, if you can't make it out, I totally understand. We'll get you in virtually.
Well, I got thrown a curveball. It's my 1-year-old niece's. Well, she's going to be 1 birthday, and they're throwing it on Friday night.
After the draft?
Yes. So I'd have to get real creative with flights and all that stuff. And I feel like I should be there. She's kind of experiencing a little bit of health issues at the moment, so kind of feel like I need to be there.
Totally
And yeah, so
anybody understands I do.
What's that?
Anybody understands that I do.
Yeah. How's your daughter doing?
She's fine. 4 visits to the ER and no answers, so that was great. But she had like the flu bug, and then for whatever reason it like never left her system, and they couldn't pinpoint like why she was having the stomach issues, but she's all better now, we think. She had a couple soccer games since then. So yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, not good it happened in the first place, but
right, yeah. Yeah, I was kind of worried there. Both kids were getting it. I was like praying. Like I was wearing a mask around the house. I was wearing latex gloves everywhere. Like,
yeah, you don't want that stuff. You don't want that stuff.
No.
Kids they're a petri dish of all kinds of goodies, dude.
I know. You're gonna find out too, Scott. I never got sick until I had kids.
Oh yeah, I mean I get sick more now than I did, but for the most part I do a decent job of fending them off. My wife gets it more than I do, but
no.
Is the Cincinnati airport? That's a 24-hour airport, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So I might have to, if I get out there, I might have to do a real quick turnaround type of deal. So we'll see.
Well, I mean, if it's gonna be a pain, man, it's. Really
I want to do it. I mean, it sounds awesome. I want to do it. I've been wanting to do it, and then I got thrown this curveball. Basically, the week that we started taking this stuff off, the week before, like the week of the last show, basically. And so I've been trying to like work all kind, and then another thing popped up too, and so yeah, just trying to figure it all out.
Totally understandable, man. I totally get it.
But it sounds awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It'll be the first time recording, face to face with these guys, and I'm hoping we have a big turnout.
You and Mickey have never done it?
Not in person, nope.
Mm-mm.
But you guys have met up. You've met up at a game or something, though, right?
We've been to a game. We never sat together at a game.
No, we did training camp.
We did go to training camp. Yep. We went to Skyline. He gave me my computer there.
I remember that.
God, I'm gonna crush Skyline next week. That might be the first thing I do when I drive down on Thursday morning. Not even stop at home. I'm going right to Skyline. Which might not be a good idea for the rest of the day, so maybe I won't.
Yeah, you'll be blowing everybody out, dude.
I might do that on Friday morning because I got to come back here on Friday. So
is Skyline preferred over Gold Star? I'm ignorant in these ways.
I don't know. Depends on what you want. I like Gold Star's Coney's better than Skylines, but it sounds weird saying it, but the 3-ways are better.
The 3-ways. Oh my lord.
I get a 4-way onion. What's your order of choice at Skyline, Scott?
I've changed over the years. I've actually recently been going with simply a chili cheese sandwich, so I've been taking out the hot dog. But I usually do like 2 cheese conies, and then I do a chilito, which is just the chili and the cheese wrapped up in the tortilla.
Yep.
With some hot sauce.
I worked there in high school. That was fun making those.
Are like 3-way and 4-way? Is that like a topping, like the amount of toppings you put on it or something?
A 3-way is spaghetti noodles topped with the chili sauce and then cheese. So it's 3 ingredients. And then a 4-way you can get with either onions or beans. And then a 5-way is with onions and beans. So really easy to remember.
Gotcha.
4-way onion and 2 cheese conies for me.
Yeah, don't be eating that shit before the show, Nick. That's a small stage. We don't want you killing us up there on stage.
No, and then take the shirt off.
We don't want you steaming up that window behind us.
Yeah, and then when your shirt comes off, you'll be emanating onions, dude.
Oh, onions! Oh, that's gonna be great.
I'm gonna be working the crowd a little bit.
Help chili sauce stuck in your chest hair.
So, Mickey, you'll put someone on blast if they hate the pick?
I will probably have a rant or two. I don't really plan for it, but there's a lot of liquor in that bar.
If I go, I'm drinking tequila. I put it in the chat room.
I think after the show we should go to the casino.
In.
Can you tell I'm hooked? I miss Vegas.
What's your game, Nick?
I was just down there on Saturday.
I've never been to any of the casinos here in Ohio, but my game of choice is craps.
Nice.
Let's just say I hit it big in Vegas last week.
Really?
I did.
Nice.
It was a good day. Well, and then the last 2 days I was cold. So, but the first 2 days playing, it was a good day. We'll just leave it at that.
Nice. I like blackjack personally.
I started off
blackjack. I've switched to Pai Gow.
I've never played Pai Gow.
Pretty fun.
You can win some money on Pai Gow.
Yeah, and you can play for a long time because there's a lot of pushes.
Yep. You went to Vegas, Scott?
Did I?
Yeah, I thought you said you just were out there last weekend. Is that what you said?
The casino.
I was at the casino on Saturday. I was at the there's a kids pediatric cancer gala down there on Saturday that I was at, and actually we got screwed out of a we were bidding on an auction to play 2 rounds of golf down in Hilton Head with Ken Anderson, and then go into the Bengals opening home game with some ex-player named Peter Jackson. I don't even know who he is, but we kind of got screwed out of it by the auctioneers. But
Peter Jackson, was he a linebacker?
I think he was. Cause I'm pretty sure in the picture I thought I saw his number was 57.
I'm looking it up. I thought he was a linebacker.
It was awesome, man. We were about to get it for like it would have been like $700 a person. That's it. Hey, so those T-shirts I was planning on making. I was planning on just making those for the site. Did you guys want me to order those or no?
Well, I've got like inventory of shirts that nobody's buying. I also haven't mentioned it either, but I mean it's up to you.
I mean, how How many did you buy, Nick?
I bought, to start off with, I think there's about 50 shirts. There's 20. It's like half and half, black and orange.
Can you do a deal? Are you doing a deal like if they're a certain level of Patreon, they get a shirt or anything like that?
Yeah, if you're a $10 donor on Patreon per month, then you get a shirt.
Okay.
I just need to do a better job of mentioning it, and I haven't mentioned it. And I just got the orange shirts from.
You're bringing them?
Yeah, I'll bring them down.
I was gonna say you can bring them.
Yep.
So how are you going to work that there if people want a shirt? Do they buy them? Do you give them away? Do you raffle them, or what are you doing with them?
I don't know yet. I was thinking about selling them, but I don't know how Lachey's would feel about that.
Who cares? We'll sell them.
$10 and a beer, and you get a shirt.
Are they buying us the beer?
No, like the person buying the shirt says they buy a beer and they give us $10 and they get a shirt, or they buy an appetizer and give us $10 and they get if they're not drinkers, then they get a shirt or something like that. So Lachey's gets something out of it, you know.
Nick's not a drinker. Are you drinking next week, Nick?
I am a drinker actually.
Well, not on the show.
No, I you know, I didn't even think to bring it up here. I've been drinking some of those new ciders.
Which ones?
I've got in my fridge Angry Orchard right now.
Yeah.
I've been I was drinking a lot of those last week in Vegas. Not getting any flack from the wife.
You're gonna drink an Angry Balls when you're at Lachey's. You ever had that?
What's it called?
Angry Balls.
No, I never heard of it.
So it's an Angry Orchard with a shot of Fireball in it.
There you go.
See, I don't do well with
cinnamon apple right there.
I don't do well
cinnamon.
with the sugar and the hard liquor. Like, it gives me massive heartburn, like to the point where I can't function.
You should try that one though, because it's not like it's not an overpowering like stiff drink, but it changes the flavor of the cider. You might like it.
Well, I don't want to screw myself for the show, so maybe that's something I try after.
Yeah, you got all night.
Yeah.
We'll get you one at the casino.
Cody says, "Don't do it, Nick." Oh, that's just a great omen. So yeah, my trip started off. I land in Vegas, and I'm waiting outside for the airport shuttle, and this gentleman, probably in his 70s, walks by, and he's wearing a Bengals polo, and I just yell, "Hooday!" And he didn't even give me a hooday back. He just went, "All right."
You probably found it at the thrift store.
Yeah, but sometimes you catch people off guard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'll wear like a Ohio State hat, and I'll be in like Nashville, and someone will look at me like, "Oh wait," and it takes me a minute. Like, "Oh wait, yeah, you're right. Cool, man." I guess I don't think it as fast as a lot of Ohio State fans.
I was at the gym yesterday, and I was wearing an old Bengals shirt, and some guy in a Chargers shirt was totally mad dogging me when I was like walking around. I'm like, dude, just go away.
Yeah.
Did you remind him what we did to Bo Jackson? You'd be like, "I'll break your hip just like we did Bo Jackson."
Well, I said Chargers, but not Raiders.
I know. I know, but we haven't injured any Chargers that I can recall. So.
No, they've injured us.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I gotta bounce. I hate this.
Go to work, Nick.
Yep.
Sucks. At least next week
That's always.
Tuesday night.
Hey Nick, do you want me to reach out to these guys about the about like scheduling, or do you want their contact? How do you want to do that?
From
the other site.
Right. If you send me the names of the people,
Do we need that? Do we need them to call in, or are we calling them?
No,
How's it work?
we call them. I call them.
We call them.
Yeah,
Okay.
I tell them that I'll call them about 20 to 30 minutes after their pick.
Pretty dumb question, and I think I know the answer, but there's not a show Wednesday, right? Since you're doing it
Right.
Thursday. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So, yeah, just if you send me the names and the email addresses, Scott, I'll reach out and copy you as well on the email.
Okay.
And then yeah, I'll let them know. I also give them the scoop, like, hey, when I call you, you're gonna hear the show right away. So don't be scared.
Yeah.
So. All right.
And I'm gonna reach out to the gal that Mickey and I met last time down there, to see if Drew or Nick are gonna be down there. To see if we can get an idea about that.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna bounce.
All right. See you guys.
See ya.
Bye.